The hospitality business is what we have talked about is one part product and one part service. Entertainment is a part of that product. And so our students, they, all four of my classes, they worked on this research to go from 1932 to now on how the industry has changed as far as entertainment is concerned. We've talked about in our class, and we know that the 101 class is all about let's connect the dots and see the big picture of what this industry is all about. And then later from there, you go on into your culinary areas, the different fields that we have that we, as professors here, believe that we're the number one two-year school in the nation for hospitality. We are. What we all have been waiting for, the number one, the happiest mayor in America, our own Oscar B. Goodman.
Hi, Lonnie. How are you?
Good, sir. How are you?
Good to see you, buddy.
Thank you so much.
Nice seeing you.
Did you bring me flowers?
I don't share it with anyone. You know, I used to be the mayor here, and I was term limited. I served 3 4-year terms, and I wasn't able to run anymore, so I took a position with the Convention Authority. I have a great deal of admiration for the folks here. I think this is the greatest school in the Valley. There's no question about it. And everybody, you know what I love about CSN? I love the fact that the folks who attend here really want to learn. It's not an excuse to not work, because many of you already have jobs and you're just trying to better yourselves. And as I say, I take great pride in this institution. And it was a pleasure when Lonnie asked me to come here and say a couple of words. I said I certainly would, because Lonnie and myself, how many years do we go back? About 40 years together. Yeah, no, he's not joking, about 40 years together. He was a great athlete at the other school. Was it UNLV at the time or not? Nevada Southern. It was Nevada Southern, and they had, besides Lonnie as a great basketball player, they had a really great ball player by the name of Elbert Miller, who was a little All-American and brought great pride to our community here. Well, I left the mayor's job in 2011, made America history. I was the only mayor in the history of this country who swore in his spouse to succeed him. And after I swore Carolyn in, I went home and I realized for the first time in many, many years, because I had practiced criminal law representing alleged mobsters around here for years. For 35 years I did that, and mayor's job for 12 years. For the first time, if my math is good, in 47 years, I had no place to go. It's a horrible feeling. I didn't want to retire because I have a lot of energy, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't want to stay at home, and the phone rang, and the Convention Authority called me, and they said, how would you like to be the brand? And I said, what does that mean? They say, every morning, we'll send 2 showgirls over to your home, and they will pick you up, and the first thing they'll do is make you a martini with Bombay Sapphire gin, and all you have to do is sell Las Vegas. I said, boy, that's the easiest sale in the world, and they formed a special position for me. I am now the chairman of what's called the Permanent Host Committee. You know, a lot of cities have host committees that they form on an ad hoc basis. If they want to bring in a particular event, they get people from the community to get together, and they promote the event, and then everybody disappears and goes back to their ordinary life. But here, we're doing this full time, and I'll tell you why. We are the #1 tourism destination in the world. And you know, and Ronda Rousey probably could say this better than I, when you're #1, somebody's always ready to knock you off the perch to make sure that you don't remain #1. And we were over in London. How many years ago was that? A long time ago. We were in London to a travel mart. And we saw that every little town, every city, every state, every country was competing with us to get our tourism business. There's only so many places that really specialize in it, and they were all trying to spend a lot of money in order to entice these various conventioneers and meeting planners to come to their city or their town or their state or their country. And Las Vegas had to overcome that. And what we do, of course, is we have the most visible, shall I say, mark or logo imaginable in the form of my beautiful showgirls here. So it's very important that I take them wherever I go. My wife gave me immunity when I was the mayor, and the immunity has carried over to my present position, which is very nice. And we're out there talking about tourism all the time, and there's two messages that we'd like to convey. One, and this is the most important one, it really works. And this is something for you to remember when you go out into the world and you're engaged in tourism-related matters. People like to be thanked. And the first thing I do when I go out is I thank the group, whomever we're speaking to, for choosing Las Vegas, because they have so many different choices. We thank them for being here. And it's remarkable. They appreciate being thanked. And at the end of their meeting, they usually re-up or re-sign for coming back the following year or the 5 following years. And many of them have said that the reason they do that is they felt appreciated, that they weren't being taken for granted. So that's number one. Number two, and this is where I need you, because it's very important that you buy into the truth, and that is, in order to preserve tourism, we actually preserve the quality of life that we enjoy here, because the money that we get from putting heads in beds, as they say, is the money that we use for our parks and our schools and our roads and the municipalities. So it's important that we protect that. About half the people in Southern Nevada are in a tourist-related employment position. It's a $55 billion a year business. That's billion, that's not million. And that provides us with the quality of life that we enjoy here. So I can't do it by myself every single day. I need help. And we're going to make an impassioned plea, the best I could do, for you to sign up and become an ambassador and to work with us with the host committee. It doesn't cost a cent. You get a lot of perks as a result of it. We provide different kinds of entertainment during the year to make sure that everybody who is helping us out is rewarded for it. And you go out and you volunteer to attend a meeting and to make people feel welcome. You go to the airport to greet a group. It's those kind of things. But the main thing is you feel you're part of the community. So with that, Lonnie, I'm happy to answer any questions that the class has. Does anybody have any questions? You're all smart students. Well, if you don't have any questions, I'll start drinking. And you see the way I drink. This is not a stupid olive in here. This is a real jalapeno pepper. Yes, and that's what I do. And when you drink your martinis, please ask for a jalapeno pepper because it's amazing. I'm going to give you a lesson now on jalapeno peppers. In the martini, when you have a jalapeno pepper, when you drink down to here, it's mellow. It's really very, very cool. It's a great drink. When you drink from here to here, you begin to lose the sensation in your fingers and your toes, and that's when you call upon the designated driver. It's when you hit the halfway mark here. Yes?
In my classroom, we learned that if you bring something for one, you must bring something for all. I brought something for all in terms of that jalapeno.
Yeah, you want to know something? That's not the American way, lady.
You've been here a long time. What do you see as like the biggest change you've seen in Las Vegas in all the years that you've been here?
Well, I have to relate it to my own experience, of course. That's what we talk about. When I got here in 1964, before you were even a glint in your parents' eyes, it was a cow town. It was a small town. Everybody knew each other. Our social life revolved around a supermarket, believe it or not. It was in Commercial Center, which is off of East Sahara. And people would go to the supermarket on Saturday and Sunday, and you would see the doctors, and you'd see the coaches, and you'd see the reputed mobsters, and senators. Everybody was there, and everybody knew each other in those days. And then as the town got bigger and I think better in many respects, even though we lost a lot of the personal touch, we had the best in restaurants now. We have the best in retail boutique shopping now. We have the best in entertainment. We have the best of all these things, which was an evolving process. But when I was elected in 1999, the downtown of Las Vegas was really in a state of malaise. There just was no energy. It was lethargic. And I, as a criminal lawyer, would travel around the country, and I would go into these major cities, and I would see the inner city look like rubble. And I didn't want to see that happen in Las Vegas, and it was beginning to go that way. So I promised myself that I would try to do my best to create some kind of a renaissance here to bring vitality into the downtown. And if I felt that I did any good at all, it was that, to really make the downtown a place that was vibrant, and every single day something new pops up there, and it's all positive stuff. And there's no negativity down there, and I think that is really going to be the very vibrant inner core of our community here, and we're already feeling it with our visitors. Many of them want to come downtown. The hotels are doing very, very well there. There was a time I wouldn't enter some of those downtown hotel casinos for fear of getting a secondary lung disease. But now they've all put money into them. They fixed them up. It really is, it's great to see the vitality down there. Tony Shea coming by and making his contribution, all the little pop-ups that are taking place all over. So on the western side of the tracks, we finally have great culture with the Smith Center Performing Arts. We're at the beginning of great medicine, which will be a tourism magnet, because the Ruvo Cleveland Clinic Brain Institute is something very, very special, and people from all over the world are taking note of it. And we have all these wonderful things that are taking place. So one of the things that we offer is membership as an ambassador with the host committee. That's a good way to start, because we'll get you involved with community activities and affairs and the like. And there's so many programs in Las Vegas that offer internships, which is a wonderful way to get involved and to find out what a community is all about. And you could use this as a stepping stone. It's great on a resume. And I know the city of Las Vegas has several programs like that. The Convention Authority hires interns during the summertime. And those are wonderful opportunities. Not only can you make a little bit of money doing it, but the people that you can meet could be of great value to you in your future endeavors, particularly if you're getting involved in an activity which is associated with the internship. So those are the kind of things that I would suggest.
Thank you so much. We should really stand and give him a big hand, you guys. Come on. Thank you so much, Mayor. Thank you. He has done so much for a lot of people like myself. I worked at SIG's marketing company years ago. It was R&R Advertising then. And just sitting around watching the people come and go. I mean, they were the movers and shakers of this town. And they all came to see SIG. They all came to utilize his expertise, whether it was in marketing or ideas. I'm telling you, he is a phenomenon himself. So without any further ado, you guys have Googled Mr. Sig Rogich. So I would like Sig to please come up, and thank you for coming. Now, I want to tell a lot of people, Ambassador Rogich. I mean, we started talking about the titles. I want to share with you that I was on a flight with Mr. Rogich, coming from. We were going to buy cigars for the Big Smoke in Dallas, and we were on Steve Wynn's private jet, and someone Sig had told me, Lonnie, we're not going to take that Northwestern. We're going to, use somebody's plane. It was his friend, Steve Wynn. And someone was going to hitchhike with us. So when Sig says somebody's going to hitchhike with you, look out. It could be anybody. Well, guess what? Secret Service drives up, and the President of the United States joins us on a flight to the Big Smoke in Dallas. And it was just unreal. So many things that I talked to you about in class, I've stole a lot of it from SIG. But anyway, without any further ado, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Lonnie. Growth, you know, I watched this town grow up. One of the things we did not have in this town is proper planning. If you look at it, in the old days, if you look at the surface streets in a big city like this, and we're a melting pot, by the way, Las Vegas, I give speeches and I tell people that Las Vegas is a lot like Pittsburgh. I use that as an example because Pittsburgh had less formally educated people that worked there as coal miners, you know, and in the steel mills. They made good livings and they took their money and they put their kids through college because they didn't want them to have to do the same thing. We're similar to that. Families come here and they work in the culinary trades and they make good livings and they help their kids go to school. So I think we're kind of that melting pot atmosphere here in Las Vegas. Along the way, we had a lot of corruption here in government. That's why you see the surface streets, Sahara, Tropicana, Flamingo, just as examples, having built right up to the sidewalk. So we have no room to widen the streets. We have no bus lanes. How many people have been behind a bus in that right-hand lane? Have you ever been to cities where that happens? It doesn't happen. You go to Phoenix or Denver, other places, it's all taken care of because they planned it properly. Here, they gave variances. They let people build right up to the property line. I think it was a system of bad government for many, many years, and we're paying the price for it. So what do you do as we grow? We're going to be 2.5 million people before you know it. Another 10 or 12 years will be 3 million people in the valley. Imagine. So what do you do when you want to get across town? They're going to have to build second ramps on these surface streets. You know, who would have thought that? We shouldn't have to do it, but it comes because we did not have good planning. So for all of you, when you read the paper about planning commissions and city councils and county governments and the governor's office and senator's office and the things they're doing in the town, pay attention. Ask yourself if it's good planning. When you read about someone building mini warehouses on a corner of a major intersection right up on the corner on the sidewalk, and then do something about it. One thing you can pay attention to is the fact that gaming is the fourth provider of revenue for our community. It's room, food, beverage, and retail. You know, it's ahead of gaming. And so what does that tell you? People come here to shop and eat and drink and enjoy the atmosphere. A lot of things are going to happen here in the next year in this city. The convention center is going to demolish the Riviera Hotel. They're going to build right up to the curb there on the Strip and have all that convention space. And so that's a significant thing. In the next year, 2016, Las Vegas has the final presidential debate for the world to see. Now imagine what that means to our city. I used to market this town when I owned R&R Advertising. We did all the commercials for the convention center. The company still does. But to have that name, they call it a dateline, to have the name Las Vegas in every newspaper on the planet and every television station, to be mentioned on every radio broadcast, for a city that spends hundreds of millions of dollars just to get its name before the public, look how important that is to our city. So you all should think about how you can participate in this thing called the presidential debate. It's coming up. There'll be forums. I've been dealing with Time Warner recently to try to get them enthused about coming here, and they're going to, Time Magazine, because I think it's important to our town.
What is some advice you can give them as they go out to some of their first interviews and they're a little nervous? What is some of the best advice you can give them to make that great first impression, to really get that first job to move into the industry?
Well, that's a great question, too. First of all, make sure your resume looks good. I really mean that. I mean, you'd be surprised how many people come in unprepared in that regard. Have it professionally looked at and look it up on the internet. And then I think you should give people a sample of your writing skills, just a small sample, and tell them that you have the ability to communicate on their behalf. And here's a good example of what I can do. And then look people in the eye when you talk to them. It's pretty simple, really. And don't be afraid to smile, and don't be afraid to tell someone you're scared. Look people in the eye, but show them what you can do. Make sure you're details are in order before you go in for that interview. It'll be enhancing to your opportunity to succeed. I've been working on that high-speed train now for 12 years. Just let me tell you what the process is. And I'll tell you what happened during that period of time. In the 12 years, China built something like, I don't know, 500,000 miles of rail service throughout their country. In that period of time, Japan enhanced their rail service, Germany, Switzerland. It took us 12 years to go through 21 federal agencies at a cost of over $50 million just to get approvals to build a high-speed train. Everybody says, well, why did it stop in Victorville? It wasn't stopping in Victorville. That was the first landing, and then the connector should go over to the part of California through Palmdale, which is a 50-mile jaunt. But to get the environmental impact statement approved, we had to get approval from the Department of Energy, Department of Interior, the Federal Railroad Commission, the state of California, the state of Nevada. We had to go through the Friends of the Mojave, the Sierra Club. We had to go through the legislative process in Nevada and California. We had to go through the White House, the Senate, the House, the leadership in transportation. So there's 13 entities that I've named of the 21 we had to go through. And then we had to have a series of hearings, maybe 30 public hearings, just to get approved. Well, we're approved. The cost to build a train like that is about $10 to $12 billion now. Everybody says, well, why don't we build a maglev and take it from Las Vegas right down to Anaheim? Well, first of all, you can't build a train through the heartland of Southern California. They're not going to shut down the freeways and the overpasses and everything to build a train. Plus, all the infrastructure on the ground makes it impossible to go over the Cajon Pass and down. The cost to build a maglev train would have cost something like $60 billion. Nobody knows for sure. That's why maglev isn't built here. It's just too expensive. And then maglev means that. When it stops, it levitates. Magnets keep it. You know, they levitate. That's electricity. The cost of running it is extraordinary. Having said that, we just signed an agreement with China, and in December we'll have more definitive approvals, but we believe that there's a possibility that a high-speed train would then go from here to Victorville to Palmdale to Los Angeles in 2 hours and 30 minutes. And that would be very transformational. A lot of you don't realize this, and people don't because they don't pay attention to it, but there's no room to expand the interstates either, the I-15 corridor. But truck traffic is going to double in the next 5 to 7 years, which means that if it takes you 5 hours to get to San Diego, it's probably going to take you 10. So I think there's a good chance that it could happen. We're cautiously optimistic, but we've come farther than anyone has ever come before. This will be the first high-speed train in the history of this country. And then, by the way, someone says, well, why don't you travel 300 miles an hour? The efficiencies, just so you know it, if it cost you 10 cents a kilowatt, just to say, just random numbers, to run it at 190 miles an hour, to go from 190 to 200 miles an hour, cost you 40 cents. So there's no efficiency in getting that extra 10 miles an hour, and you don't really save time. That's why the average train speed across the world, average, is about 190 miles an hour. And then you can only travel so fast, you know. So that's all part of, that's a summation, a quick synopsis of where we are with the high-speed train.
Mother.
Young lady, how are you?
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but she's leaving now because she's not feeling well. So, but you remember her when you, yes, years ago. I want to share with you a young lady that is a student here that has performed for years, but I'm going to let her talk to you about that. Without any further ado, Elena Lev from Russia, now with love and here in Vegas. All right.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm a little bit shy, although I've been a performer for the past 22 years with I come from Russia, Moscow. I joined Cirque du Soleil when I was 12, and I started touring the world, starting from Canada and all over North America, Europe, Asia, all over the place. So I'm originally a rhythmic gymnast, and my parents were my coaches, and I've created a solo act with hula hoop and contortion, and I've traveled around the world. I've been a performer for 22 years. My career's been great, and it's been successful. I'm kind of known around the world in what I do and in great companies. Cirque du Soleil, you all know it has 8 shows. I'm personally been a part of 6 total. 4 of them were touring and 2 of them were one in Madison Square Garden, New York, and one that's located here, which is Humanity. I don't know if some of you have seen it. It's a little burlesque, but amazing show. Photo shoots, movies, performance, that's on top of the New York Tower. So a lot of things. It's been great. But I have a 10-year-old daughter, and I'm 33. And what's next? I've been performing with my body. I'm getting tired. And I'm like, I need to do something for myself. Another passion in my life that I have is actually cooking. And originally I wanted to actually go to Le Cordon Bleu. I speak fluently French, I speak Russian, and I was like, I love cooking, I cook at home, but then I was like, do I really want to be in the kitchen the whole day? That's something different, because I'm used to running around, traveling around, and just have my hands full, nonstop. So last year, as of January, I was going for a knee surgery, which is my second surgery, and I was like, I have to start something. So I looked into CSN, something that will really fit to my heart and something that I would be passionate about. So I decided to go for an associate's degree in food and beverage management. This is what I started in January. I've taken a couple great classes so far, including with this one, this semester, hospitality, where Professor Doctor, right, really pushed me to some things. And being already in the 3rd semester, well, 2nd and the summer, I have achieved some great things for myself, I think, with his help and the class and everything. So this is my daughter. She's also my inspiration and my life. So sorry. And cooking class is what I'm taking as well. Paula is somewhere there, my team person from cooking, and I'm currently taking Chef Steve's class, just basic cookery, and it's been actually amazing. We also rock. We're the top of the class. So basically you see me doing different things. I'm an instructor. I teach fitness. I perform at a show. I cook. This is me working and studying. I have 2 or 3 computers, and I'm a mother. And in a class about a month ago, Professor Wright said, I will give you 5 extra points if you write a letter to a company that you would like to maybe work for, you have an idea for, just to get it and put it out there. I was like, okay, I'll do that. I had something in mind. And I had a friend who kind of noticed me as I was behind the desk working, managing front desk and an instructor. She's like, hey, you want to come and do like internship for me? Just, extra money, do some inventories, do some things. And I'm like, okay, it sounds good. And then she goes, well, there's actually a positioning opening in my company. Would you like to do an interview? And I was like, hey, I have this letter, so let me send this letter because I can get 5 points extra credit. She's like, sure, whatever you need. So I send in that letter. I get a reply, and I have an interview scheduled 2 weeks later. And the company is actually Brown-Forman. They own Jack Daniel's whiskey and Chambord and Corbel Champagne and Herradura. So it's a big, big alcohol company. And the company that works for them is called The Hive. Basically, we operate and market and everything for Brown-Forman. So I got to have an interview with 2 of the Brown-Forman directors here in Las Vegas. One manages MGM Groups, one manages like Hakkasan, Caesar Palace. It's a lot of information in the past month. So I did the interview, and a half an hour later, the guy calls me and he says, you got a job. So, this is another show that I will be doing for Christmas in Mexican ballet circus. So I'm still performing. So basically, I became a market manager for The Hive who works for Brown-Forman. And right now it's been a month. I celebrated my month. Instead of 5 extra credits, I got 15 points. Yay. And now I get to stand in front of you here and shake and be nervous, although I am a performer and I perform in front of like thousands of people. But I'm very fortunate to know such people, professors. I have a great group, and it's been really a great experience to come back to school at 33. Being a mom, work full job, and I graduated in French, Canadian, and Russian. So it was hard. I didn't know what to expect, but so far it's been really welcoming and really warm, and I think it's amazing. This is what I do now on a daily basis. I get to taste whiskey, talk about whiskey, teach whiskey, and meet, I visit about 2-3 casinos every day and meet the managers and market managers and get to promote mostly Jack Daniels and do like a lot of events, and so it's been a great experience. And right now I'll just show you a little video because Mr. Wright, Professor Wright insisted, so you get to see a little bit of entertainment, and thank you very much.
Pat Christensen, as I was saying, is the guru for special events. I'm just going to let him talk to you right now.
I came here in 1980. And in 1983, they dropped the wrestling program. And the guy that brought me here took over the management of Thomas & Mack Center. At the time, when they were formulating the concept behind Thomas & Mack Center, originally was going to be a 15,000-seat arena. And it was going to be just basketball. Somewhere along the line, they decided that wasn't enough seats. Very, very fortuitous when you see the rest of my presentation, how that played out. But when they added the 3,500 seats, they didn't add any funding for it. So somehow, and I think that's how things were done in Vegas then, said, well, we're just going to do this. So about 6 months before it was ready to open, there was a huge red flags all over the place because there was no funding. Absolutely no funding to operate this as a self-operated building. In fact, it was about $10 million. They took $10 million worth of things out of the venue. So if you look at these pictures here, you look at that one on the top left, that was the concourse when it opened. In fact, not only did it not have any finishes in the concourse, the concession stands were plumbed for electrical and water, nothing else. The suites were plumbed for electrical water. They weren't finished. The parking lot, if you look on the right, that was the parking lot. It wasn't paved. So the administration had to do some thinking, rethinking this. They went to Dennis Finfrock, or actually Dennis went to them and said, listen, what you're going to have to do is this can't be a basketball only venue. What you're going to have to do is do special events to pay your own way. And that really was how the whole transformation from T&M, it's 18,500 seat venue, went from that to what it is today. I told you, Lonnie and I go way back, and what we did in the 80s, and what the MBA allowed us to do, is create these alumni games. We do North Carolina versus UNLV, Michigan State versus UNLV. I think we did North Carolina State versus UNLV. But I want to share one little promotion we did that I tell this story to anybody I meet. We were doing Michigan State versus UNLV. This was just after the I think it was just before our 89, 90. Anyway, so Magic was part of it. And we had a press conference at Caesars. Caesars is one of our sponsors. We went up to the room afterwards, And we said, Magic, we want to be able to promote this event. So we wanted you to be part of a TV spot we're going to cut. So I want to share with you that TV spot.
On August 28th, the Michigan State Spartans will come to Las Vegas and kill the running rebels.
What a challenge! The NBA's most valuable player, Magic Johnson, will lead Michigan State against the best from UNLV. It's August 28th at the Thomas & Mack Center, co-sponsored by KLAV Radio and TV5. The Rebels, led by NBA stars Sid Green, Reggie Theus, and Armand Gilliam, will face their biggest test in Scott Scowl, 7-footer Kevin Willis, and the Magic Man.
We're coming to Vegas to get ya.
I have to tell you, that spot alone, I know sold 3,000 more tickets. I think we ended up with about 16,000 tickets. Very, very successful event for us. So at the same time we were opening Thomas & Mack Center, the university decided to take over Sam Boyd Stadium. Well, Sam Boyd Stadium wasn't in much better shape. 30,000 seats, had a very, very bad turf. In fact, if you were there in 1980, literally you could bounce the ball off the field as easy as you could bounce it on a basketball court. That's how bad a shape that was in. So we, when we took it over, we decided the first year we're going to do the same thing. We're going to apply a philosophy. We're going to bring a lot of events there. Before that, they didn't do any special events at the stadium. We brought a whole slew of mud bogs, tractor pulls. We probably did 7-8 events that summer. Probably made close to $800,000 in the summer, which was their budget for 3 years before that. Unfortunately, learned a big lesson. Almost cost us our jobs. The operation guy that we hired, he was supposed to have, we were supposed to put 2 layers of rubber down under the dirt, and then biscuit. Well, he forgot the 2 layers of rubber. So I remember, I'll never forget this, on a Monday after we just finished 3 months of events, get this call to go down to the stadium. Well, the front end loader had loaded out half of the dirt and half of our turf with it. Now this is a month before the Rebels are getting ready to play football. I'll never forget this because we literally were kind of thinking this was it. We were on an interim basis. We were brought in to do special events. We had to prove ourselves. So we thought, we're never going to get this done. So, like most things, you sit down, take a breath. We brought Monsanto in, and that turf was in such bad shape. We patched it up. They patched it up. We came to the first game. No one even noticed. But that turf literally ushered in a whole era of events that changed the way Las Vegas looks at special events. But I'm going to talk just about Las Vegas events and our role in bringing these big-time special events to town. So Las Vegas Events is a private nonprofit group. It's funded by the hotel tax. It has a history going back from 1983 where it was literally funded by a couple of individuals, and that evolved into a funding source for just it, and now it is funded by a portion of the hotel tax through the LVCVA, all focused on bringing special events here to town. Looking back on that, when LVE was formed, there were 53,000 rooms here in Clark County. 529,000 was the population. So you're looking at 1983. One of the major, probably the biggest move in events we've ever made was bringing the National Finals Rodeo here in 1985. Literally on the Benny Binion and the gentleman on the left, who was the president then of the PRCA, which is our partner today in the rodeo. It was a 5-5 vote. This guy on the left made the final vote, and he today is still the general manager of the NFR, the guy that does all the production of the NFR. So that started in 1985. But if you look at 1985, the thing about National Finals Rodeo is we have this event that's now been sold out 29 years straight. But even it had its humble beginnings. And this picture here on the top, it didn't sell out the first 2 years. What we do is we secure events for the destination and then develop those events, ensure their success. So we're not here just to write a check for an event producer. We're here to connect all the different hotels and generate dollars. So the services, marketing, event development, finance, event operations. So there are 5 core things we do, and it's these people that make all of that happen. And looking again, 1996 to 2001, we continue to evolve events. In 2000, we were doing 21 events. So I talked to you earlier about 8 events. The organization and the things they did continue to evolve. In 2001, really things started to take off. And instead of just getting into your traditional events, we got into a lot of events that have a season long. We got into NASCAR. We got into NHRA, Supercross, off-road racing. So things that had a foundation behind them, the WAC basketball tournament, the football, all of these that have season-long promotions that culminate with a championship in Las Vegas. At the time, population in 2006 was 1.9 million. Room inventory was 132,000. So we're growing. Las Vegas is growing and evolving, and as we're growing and evolving, we're doing more with the special events. And again, we were securing events up till 2007, but we really weren't connected to the hotels. Things were so good then. When we did a race or we did an event, people bought tickets. They paid the highest price for the tickets. The rooms were probably based on 2009, 2010, 2011, probably about 50% higher than that room rate then. We were printing money. Las Vegas was on a roll. But when the recession hit, we had to rethink things. So instead of us just bringing events in, securing events, and giving them a check, we became much more engaged in the event. And we created what we call the Signature Event Initiative. So if you look at this, the cycle's this. We secure the event. We have an event producer. We commit. We invest in the event. Could be anywhere from $25,000 to $500,000 that we put into the event. And the purpose of that is to help promote, market the event, and to give them security in producing their event. Then we connect everybody to the hotels. So it's not just about bringing the event here. Now they're working with hotel partnerships, create spin-off events, and I'm going to talk about the ultimate event with spin-offs, which is the National Finals Rodeo. There's marketing, and then there's a full improved event experience. So there's no place in the world that has a system like this that connects all of the players together to maximize the return for Las Vegas. Our role is to secure events and ensure their success. That's our total mission. Get events here, but as you'll learn in customer service, it's much easier to keep an event. It's much easier to keep a customer than to find a new customer. So we're completely engaged in all of it takes to bring different special events here to town. When I first came on, we did seemed like a good idea at the time. It was chuck wagon races, very, very popular in Canada. We had a promoter that I think we put $125,000 into this event. And the reason I know it's $125,000, I still have board members that remind me of this event. I'll never forget, they set it up for 8,000 seats downtown. And no one showed up. So what we did is we took a look at all that and said, listen, we're going to be a little more picky. And so we established is that we're going to have established events with a strong brand behind them. Events where they have a strong potential visitors with hotel partners. So that's the criteria we look at, and that's how the board considers securing different events. Introducing new visitors to the destination, spin-off events, and then every event we do research. And what happens with our research is we kind of dial down the value of a customer. Research is very simple. We research almost every event, 400 people. And what we create is what we understand is the direct spend. So you're going to hear, I have a whole different philosophy about economics and events. But to me, there is no hypocrisy in what we look for. We're looking at a direct spend. And the difference between that and what you hear in a lot of sports franchises in other cities is almost, I would say, the average travel for one of our events is 70% of that event. Some are a lot more. National Finals Rodeo is 95% of the people come to the NFR come from out of the state. So that's all direct spend that wouldn't be dispersed in the market. It's coming from somewhere else into here. That's very, very valuable. So if you look at the different numbers up here, we measure is the customer, the National Finals Rodeo customer is worth $2,340. Probably an average stay of 4.5 days. The NASCAR fan, $1,390. Now that's the direct spend. There's no induced spending. There's no indirect spend. That's all the direct spend. So that's what they spend on hotel rooms, flights, entertainment while they're here. From there, once we sold out the venue, we started doing satellite feeds into the hotels. So you couldn't get a ticket. Well, just still come to town and you can watch it live with the announcers. It's not like it's on CBS Sports, not in ESPN. You're seeing the live feed from the announcers. So we did that till about 2001, 2002. And then when we created this signature event initiative, we used the National Finals Rodeo to launch it all. Today, the National Finals Rodeo literally has 3 shifts of events that take place throughout the 10 days it's here. And we break them down like this, 9 to 5. So you look at 9 to 5. Cowboy Christmas itself there's 3 gift shows in town. Cowboy Christmas is at the Convention Authority. It literally is 400 vendors with the most unique Western apparel there is. There's no gift show like it. So over the 10 days, in addition to the 170,000 tickets we sell at Cowboy Christmas, or at the NFR, we have Cowboy Christmas and I would say the other gift shows, the other 5 gift shows collectively probably have another 200,000 customers. Mandalay Bay Event Center, MGM Grand Garden, we all know. You look at the private venues and the things, we don't support regular boxing. We don't support the concerts. The hotels prefer to do those themselves. We're supportive of the big-time special events. At the MGM Grand Garden, ACM Awards Show, Pac-12 basketball tournament, UFC Fight Week. Life is Beautiful is one of the most unique. It's 18 square blocks downtown, music festival. 5 years ago, we weren't doing any music at all, any music festivals at all. In fact, we did Vegas out at the stadium and then till EDC. But since then, if you go look along the strip, we're selling close to 1 million tickets. This city has evolved. Events are a big part of it. The hotels on a nightly basis are competing for what's the next and best piece of entertainment. Our role is special events. Our role is to look at the calendar. Where can we plug in an event that is going to bring an incremental customer to Las Vegas, secure that event, and ensure that we can keep that event here forever?
You know, this gentleman and I go way back when we were collaborating and bringing in Michael and Magic and all those guys. We did some things to bring in, those key people, but Pat has taken this on steroids. 24 teams from the NBA are now here because of this man. And you see all of these events that he's going to have. Can you imagine if we have the Super Bowl here? All right, I hope you learned something, you guys. Governor, mayor, attorney general. Okay.
My father came here in 1926. Las Vegas was a railroad town. It was not until 1931 that the Nevada legislature legalized casino gaming. So none of that existed when my father came. When my dad finished law school in Washington, D.C., we came back here in January of 42. I was just a little guy, but I do remember the trip. There was the El Rancho Vegas was the only property on the Las Vegas Strip. The population in 1940 in Las Vegas was about 8,500. Reno was about 3 times the size. And Las Vegas really was more of a railroad town. The iteration in terms of how Las Vegas in the modern era came into existence. And the guy whose name is our county was one of the notorious rogues of the Golden Age, William Andrews Clark, who had bribed his way into the United States Senate. Senate rejected him. He later got there, but that was Senator Clark. And William Andrews Clark was the one that proposed that we needed a connecting link. There was no rail link between Salt Lake City and Los Angeles, none. And so he financed the operation that was later became the Union Pacific. And that's how Las Vegas in the modern, you've all seen the pictures, 1905, the auction and all that. Prior to that, it was kind of a stop on the old Spanish Trail. There was water here. When I was a kid growing up, the artesians flowed to the surface in many parts of the valley. And In fact, in 1948, Woolworth and Cornett, two big new developments in downtown Las Vegas, were racing to get completed before Christmas. Woolworth succeeded, Cornett did not. Their master plan had a basement, and they couldn't control the water. So, okay, so let's go fast forward. That's enough about the old history. So, and I think Pat did a great job of explaining some of the changes. But in 1941, the El Rancho came, and then in 1942, the Last Frontier. They were the only two properties on what later became the Las Vegas Strip. And my father was a lawyer. It was the days before people had credit cards. There was no Visa, MasterCard. Maybe somebody had an American Express. But, you know, my father was an attorney, so I don't want to portray us as, you know, I mean, a poor family. But the locals, the professional, the business people, they had what they call city ledger accounts at the El Rancho and the Frontier, and later the Flamingo, and I want to get into that for a moment. And one of the benefits of that is you could take your client or the family and charge it, and they would send you the statement. Now, as a kid, I wasn't thinking about client or charging anything, but as a member of his family, we had swimming privileges. So I swam at the El Rancho, the Last Frontier. This is long before people had, you know, pools. And I remember when the Flamingo opened up, that was still one of the great pools in Satan. Going out there to the Flamingo was really a... So what happened? I mean, the war ends in 1945, and the concern was that Las Vegas would be the same sleepy town it was before World War II. Two big events that today would have been considered catastrophic. Nellis, as we know it today, the Las Vegas Army, it closed. End of the war, closed. BMI, basic magnesium, which led to Henderson's formation. All of those old plants closed even before the war. So this kind of looks like, wow, two strikes, one more, we're out. But certain things had changed, and Pat has done an extraordinary job with the LVCVA. A few things were changing. People had a lot of money after World War II. You couldn't buy an automobile. You couldn't travel. People were getting overtime, so there was affluence. We're talking not just about the so-called one percenters, but we're saying most Americans had been working and a couple things happened. One, the work week. When my father was a lawyer practicing, the courthouse was open on Saturday. So the work week was 5.5 days a week. Shortly after the war ended, the work week became 5 days. That meant you could drive up from L.A., spend Friday night here, Saturday night here, and there were other things that occurred. All of a sudden, you know, airline travel became more commonplace. Now, in the 1940s, we didn't have a whole lot of air travel. Automobiles, a little better. And lo and behold, the combination of the shorter work week, the fact that there was a greater affluence, and the fact that Las Vegas had begun to establish a dateline. All of those early performers. Liberace performed during the 40s. Sophie Tucker, the last of the Red Hot Mamas, and Jimmy Durante, and those performers. And so before all of you who are decades younger than I talked about entertainment concerts, they didn't have those. So entertainers came and made big money, you know, for performing. Sometimes they performed as many as 2 or 3 shows. Always a dinner show, a late night show. Well, today, these big stars that we have can make more money in one big concert than they could have made in a 6-week tour. So Las Vegas really began to get this, you know, the entertainment capital of the world. And we struggled in those early years because there was a Las Vegas, New Mexico. And believe it or not, there was some confusion about which Las Vegas are we talking about. But gradually, we kind of made some inroads, and then the Flamingo opened. Now, Bugsy Siegel didn't start the Flamingo. Write that down, enter that, Pat. That is absolutely, in the idiom of the street, bull. He didn't start it. He didn't start it. A guy by the name of Billy Wilkerson who had the Hollywood Reporter. He was the guy, he had a lot of places in California. He saw an opportunity to build the Flamingo, which was totally different than the El Rancho and the Frontier. Now, let me say, we talk a lot how smart people are with themed resorts. Let me pop that bubble. The El Rancho and the Last Frontier were themed resorts. They were Western. The theme of the Last Frontier was the Old West in modern splendor. The car parkers, the waitresses, the cocktail servers, all of these were Western attire. So it was kind of a Western theme. But the Flamingo was like it's right out of Miami Beach. Art Deco. Those pools that I talk about when I was a little kid were always in front of the hotel, so you faced the highway. The Flamingo had this beautiful landscaping in the pool set in the center. And all of a sudden, Bugsy Siegel, they muscled Billy out. There's no question about that. And when it opened, it was big cost overrun, and Bugsy Siegel had an accelerated demise, let's put it that way. About the same time, there were reform movements in most of the cities in America that had illegal gaming. You had places like Steubenville, Hot Springs, Arkansas, even a Boise, Idaho, Steubenville. And so in my youth, by the time I was getting ready to go into high school, these places have been shut down. In other words, the way they operated historically before the war and during the first years during the war were in effect, look, it's illegal. The local sheriff, the local mayor, look, it's election time. We got to raid the place. All you can be thrown in jail, which you get out in a few days and start it back up. Well, that ended. And so the people that knew how to run those games came to Las Vegas, many of whom their children were contemporary of mine. And the deal in Vegas was kind of an unwritten compact. We're not going to ask you a whole lot about your background. It's what you do here. Now, we later learned that a lot of them had mob connections, no question. By the time I was Attorney General, we were moving to try to get rid of it. There's no question there were some mob connections. But by and large, in general, they behaved themselves in Las Vegas. Another myth. Write this down. The mob ran the town. Bullshit, too. The mob gave a rat's petunia about who ran the town. Just leave us alone. Just leave us alone. Let us do our thing. And we've all heard the expression, the gaming expression, cover your bets. So if you had two candidates that looked like they were real candidates, the gaming industry would contribute to both. Cover the bets. By the time my father became Justice of the Peace in 1958, the Strip was booming. And it was fun. The industry grew and it prospered and did very, very well. And then probably about Paul Laxalt was governor. And two things occurred that changed it forever. One, Laxalt initiated legislation to authorize corporate gaming. Now, what the hell does that mean? Before corporate gaming, every individual, everybody with the room temperature IQ had to be investigated and approved by the Gaming Control Board and the Gaming Commission. Everyone. Whether you had a 10-cent interest, some hyperbole in that. Well, obviously, corporate America, where you've got tens of thousands, that wouldn't work. And so Laxalt, there was a lot of criticism and uncertainty about it, but that was ultimately approved by the time I was elected to the Assembly in 1869. We're putting on the finishing touches on that. What corporate gaming made possible were the resort palaces that we know today, which cost hundreds of millions. You couldn't do that if you didn't have the ability, to raise that kind of capital. So that's the Las Vegas Strip as we see it today would not exist. Second thing that Laxalt did, and unless you think I'm being partisan, I'm a big Democrat. But the second thing that Laxalt did, which affects all of you, Laxalt was interested in creating a community college system, and he deserves credit for that. You know, if I were here to offer criticism of Paul, who's very ill today, I could do that too, but that's not the forum. Laxalt deserves credit for that, and that's the origin of where you're all enrolled today. And it was an extraordinary movement and development. There was, when I graduated from Las Vegas High School in 1955, there was no UNLV. There was no Nevada Southern. What was occurring down here was the Southern Regional Branch of the University of Nevada. And the only office existed, for those of you that know anything about the old Las Vegas High School, in Fraser Hall. And there was a little office of the Southern Regional Branch of the University of Nevada. Well, you know what's happened. I mean, today, extraordinary growth, and, you know, this college is the largest of the entire university system by far. And that's where I think I want to talk a little bit about opportunity in you, because you're in a field that's growing rapidly, the hospitality industry. Pat shared a statistic for you. Let me emphasize that again. When I was growing up in those early days as a kid, and even when I was in high school and college, the gaming industry, the rooms and all of that were amenities. They were not a revenue stream. We talked in the old days about the power of the pen. That's somebody in the gaming pit who had the ability to give you the full comp, R-F&B, room, food, and beverage. And so, you know, they gave the rooms away virtually. The Green Eye Shade crew came in. You know those. These are the folks, the numbers guys. And that occurred when it went corporate. And they're saying to themselves, why the hell are we giving these rooms away? That's a revenue stream for us. And all of a sudden, that did become a revenue stream. And then, when Atlantic City came in 1978, 79, by then I'm Attorney General, all of a sudden, you know, the Eastern newspapers were saying, boy, you know, this could be the Waterloo of the Las Vegas Strip. I mean, gosh, Atlantic City is, you know, in one of the most populous regions of the country, New York City and all of that area. And so there was a real concern. And then the industry began to reinvent itself. And this is where the private sector gets a lot of credit. Pat's statistic is right. About 35% of the revenue today comes from gaming. But you know what's happened. And in fact, we have world-class dining. To be honest, a few price points above an old pensioner like me's income. I don't dine, but they're world-class restaurants. And chefs, look, I'm a hamburger and French fries kind of a guy, so world-class chef, that's nice. I'm glad we have them. That's not my bag. I'm not into that. You know, a good hamburger, maybe steak and baked potato, you've hit the high notes as far as my culinary taste. But they came in, and all of a sudden, these very high-end fashion places. And you know, so now it's become a destination resort, and that is and that again expands the potential opportunities for all of you in the hospitality industry. And it is fortuitous that they did that, because Atlantic City was the first. But what really began is all of a sudden we now have gaming in one form or another. Many casino gaming in 48 of the 50 states. Only Utah and Hawaii have no gaming. So, IGRA, the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, all of a sudden a lawsuit was filed, and the court ruled that the states did not have control of gaming activities on the reservation. So there is a huge gap. Who's going to regulate? And the Congress, by then I'm governor, the Congress is going to regulate Indian gaming. And they did in a way which you can agree or disagree with. So all of a sudden, Indian gaming is widespread. And so there were some impacts. The Strip, because it's reinventing itself, not hurt all that much. Reno hurt badly. Downtown Vegas hurt. Laughlin, because look, if you're cup of tea is spend a couple of days, gamble to your heart's content, have a nice room, get the kind of meal that I'm talking about, steak and baked potato and that sort of thing. You don't have to come to Las Vegas for that. And particularly in northern Nevada, we're crossing the Sierra in the wintertime. And so those casinos bled a lot. And so Laughlin hasn't grown much. And downtown Las Vegas was hurt badly. Reno particularly hard. And again, you know, it looks to me like, and Pat pointed out, downtown Las Vegas has had a resurgence where the strip revenues have been down for the last reportable quarter or month, downtown Vegas. So the industry is constantly changing and evolving, and it's an industry that I think has great potential, but it will change again. There's just no question about it.
Let me begin by saying, first of all, thank you all very much for inviting me. It is very, very important for all of us that we create a legacy. You're all heading into an industry where your interaction, that part of you that you share with others, becomes the single most important thing. Everything that you learn in the books, everything that you learn from Dr. Wright, everything you learn from this incredible school is just learning. The palette for all of that learning is each of you and what you do with it. When I look at my life today, an individual who has been honored to have a public school named after them, when I look back at my life, I say, how the heck did that happen? Where did it come from? I'll tell you where it came from. It came from believing in two things. Believing in myself and believing in the ability to help others. That's what I dedicated my life to. When I came to Las Vegas, my Las Vegas, this was a very, very, very different town than it is today. I came here in 1976. In 1976, this was a very, very different town. It was an amazingly different town. I eventually had to talk my way into a job at Channel 13, at the time it was KSHO TV, talk my way into a job if and only if I signed an agreement with the news director that I would not take his job. And I signed it. And my first job at Channel 13, I made $9,700 a year. So I went from $377,000 to $9,700 a year. And it was the best thing that I ever did in my life. And I say that to you because if you don't learn anything from me today, here's what I will tell you. Never take a job for money. Never. You take a job because it meets the passion of who you are. What is that thing inside of you that drives you forward? For all of you, hopefully, it's being in the hospitality industry. It's helping others. It's sharing this amazing world in which hospitality lives in. If that's not that passion of yours, don't do this. Because you'll be frustrated sooner or later. I knew what my passion was. So the things that were going on in Las Vegas were amazing things. Absolutely amazing. Number one was this thing that I call the population explosion that literally changed Las Vegas. It literally changed how it took place. So, in 1976, the population of Southern Nevada was 369,000 people. 1976, when I first got here. In 2 years, 1 year in 1977, it grew by 21,000 people in 1 year. Town didn't know what to do. but it also didn't know what was coming. Today, the hospitality industry is dealing with I believe, the second toughest challenge it has ever faced in its existence. The first was in the aftermath of the MGM fire in 1980, which I was very much involved in. The second was the aftermath of 1 October shooting. The hospitality industry now faces a dilemma. How is it going to face and do that? I personally believe that it will make it better than it's ever done before, because historically, we've met those challenges. So, here were the early issues of the day from 1976 to about 1995. Number one, the mob. The mob in those early days made the difference in Las Vegas. Good, bad, or indifferent, it made a difference. Had it not been the mob and its influence, you would never have had the hotels develop the way they did. Had it not been for the Teamsters Fund, had it not been for the Culinary Union, this town would never have grown to where it was. It was the people who were in the trenches, the people who were fighting for their jobs, that made the difference. So dealing with this entire issue of the mob and its growth was critically important to this town. Community and gaming growth. Remember, you just saw the population. That community and gaming growth was the challenge for this town. There's no way that we were ready for the growth that took place. But it happened, and we couldn't control it. And that happened, that had an impact next on state politics and local politics. But the biggest one is coming up, and that's civil rights. Las Vegas was not ready for the population explosion, nor was it ready for the civil rights explosion that took place. Because prior to the 70s, this was fairly much a white exclusive town. Now all of a sudden with the population growth, we had a large influx of African Americans, a large influx of Hispanics, a large influx of Asians. One thing I can tell you about Las Vegas, and one thing I can tell you in your industry, is wait. It'll change. Change in your industry is inevitable. Change in this town is inevitable. And that's how you deal with it. So from there, it came to what I believe is the biggest thing, and that's how the town dealt with it. And the way we dealt with the issues, I think, are the same way we want to deal with it today. Number one is understanding. What were the issues facing in the community? How were we going to deal with those issues? What needed to be done? That only comes through understanding. If you get understanding, you then get what I think is second, which is admittance. There's a lot of people in Las Vegas that had to admit that this town was not ready for the growth that it faced. Neither was the state. The 70s and 80s in Las Vegas were just amazing times. This town has an amazing ability to admit sometimes that we don't always know everything. In your line of work, you need to admit that yourself. When you don't know something, but understand it, ask. That brings us to the next part of this. Education. I'm not talking about what you're learning in books right now, because that's just a small part of your education. A great portion of my education came from people like Emo, like Dr. Wright, like the people of this community. That's where your education begins, like a man who's sitting in the back of the room that you're going to meet in a little bit, who was at one time our governor and was an amazing, amazing man. Not because he was governor, because he understood in his life that victims should have rights. That's education. That's learning. In your line of work, you're going to have the ability to become educated on a daily basis. What do your customers need? What are the people that need and to respond to you? What do they need? It's not just checking into a room. It's not just going to a restaurant. What do they need? That education becomes critical. Commitment. If you're not committed to what you're doing, the things that I've done in this town over time is because I've been committed to the town. I'm not the smartest. I'm not the most dedicated. There are people that are a lot more dedicated. Our wonderful governor, a lot more dedicated than I am. But my commitment was always there. Always. And making an impact, whether it be through your actions, through your deeds, through your commitment, is part of that whole part of who you are and what you're going to be. Because all of that leads to this. That's dedication. Are you dedicated? I for my 41 years in this town, I've been dedicated to this community. I love this community. I love the things about this community. I love making change in the community. Because the challenges that you now face are tougher than the challenges that we faced, Emo, Dr. Wright faced when we were your age. Because the demands upon you are even greater. You are in an industry. I was in an industry. I'm still in an industry. I'm still working my rear end off. Where passion becomes the most important part of what you do. Passion is that thing that should drive you forward. It's not the money you put in your pocket. It's not the house you live in, not the car you drive. It's whether or not when you go to bed at night, you believe you were truthful, responsible, and self-respected to yourself. One of the most brilliant men that I know is Steve Wynn. Steve, who is a very, very tough businessman. A very tough businessman. He has a thick candy shell around him. But he's like that M&M on the inside. It's just a sweetheart. And when Steve created in his mind what the Mirage was going to be, he knew at the time that would change the landscape of Las Vegas. It was where he wanted to take this town, to move it forward, to create a new mega resort. A new mega resort. In things in Las Vegas that had never been there before. You have no idea how many people told Steve Wynn he's crazy when he told them that he wanted to create a volcano in front of his hotel that had real fire. They said he was crazy. But he knew it. He knew the change it would make. Look to the people who have been there. Look to the Dr. Wrights of the world, who have gone through so much, now stands here as a leader of all of you. Become what you want to become and follow the passion, because that will lead you to a better tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Give Mr. Shore a big hand again. I ask you guys to Google Mr. Shore. Even the introduction pales to who he is and what he has done for this community. Remember, this is Let Las Vegas Be Your Classroom. We're bringing icons from Las Vegas that have made a difference in this community, in the hospitality business, like no other people. These are icons. Both our guests have schools named after them. What is that? I don't have a school named after me, but the bottom line is not yet. But that is telling you who they are. We are taking the college out to the industry, and we're interfacing with the industry, and we are going to be the bank of talent for our industry, from front of the house to back of the house. I can't number how many times I run up and down the court with Governor Miller until one time he gave me that elbow and I left him alone, you know. But anyway, Governor Miller can shoot the rock. If all the ball players know that. We used to play at the YMCA. What a great athlete he probably still is. He's every pound he lost, I found. So he probably still running up and down the floor. But without any further ado, our next speaker.
Although Las Vegas is a different place, and it's transformed dramatically over the decades. Now, so let me go back a little bit and explain the Las Vegas that you would never have known. You can go all the way back to the beginning when we were just a small valley, and Las Vegas, meaning the Meadows, attracted some population other than the Native Americans that were living in the area. We attracted some from Utah, from the LDS community, and the fort was built there. But downtown was recognized as a gaming community because it was a railroad stop between Salt Lake City and Los Angeles where they had to stop for water. And there were little sawdust-type floor saloons around Las Vegas. And it wasn't Las Vegas at that time. Its name, we're in Clark County, and Clark County is named such because it was founded by a former U.S. Senator, not of Nevada, but of Montana. He also was chronologized as perhaps one of the most corrupt U.S. senators in history. But he and his brother founded the township that became Las Vegas. Now, I came here in the mid-1950s. And the way they were structured, besides the fact that they were all ranch-style ground level, except for the Riviera, which my father came to be one of the owners in '55, and they built a 9-story tower. And he and his partners were ridiculed by all the other gaming entrepreneurs who said, "What the hell are you thinking? You want to make your guests go up and down in an elevator? We got all this space out here. Start building out in the back." And that was the beginning of transition in the types of hotels and casinos. So when I was a child, the typical hotel in Las Vegas had just one big casino area, a lounge where there was entertainment at night, a showroom where your primary entertainers were, a coffee shop, and one nice restaurant and a swimming pool. That was it. And everything for a person who was gambling was essentially given free. Anybody who was a customer of any consequence, if you were in one hotel, let's say the Riviera, but you wanted to go to something at the Desert Inn, my father from the Riviera would call his counterpart at the Desert Inn and say, "My customer Joe's coming over, can you take care of him?" And they would comp or give away things to that customer. And that would be reciprocated in reverse when the customer from the Desert Inn wanted to come to the Riviera. There are historical transitions that occurred that made the differences to lead us to where we are now. One of the first was the fact that bankers decided maybe they would take a chance. And 2 bankers, a Jewish banker from Los Angeles and a Mormon banker from Utah, got together and formed what's called Valley Bank. Now, you might have heard the term Thomas and Mack, the stadium where the UNLV Rebels play, where Dr. Wright put his tremendous hook shot and say, you're like me, he might have had a jump shot. My jump shot is if you could see air below my tight sneakers at all. But in any case, Perry Thomas and Jerry Mack were the 2 that decided, maybe we can legitimize this. We can actually loan money to these casinos because they're going to stay here and they're going to grow, and we will be able to make a profit. And so that was the first one of the more significant transitional changes that occurred. With the legitimate financing available and with the legitimacy of the public corporations being there, it was determined that you could go forward. So let's take a look at a couple of things that were really significant at the time. The Caesar's Palace was built, a themed hotel, kind of the first themed hotel. having a Roman atmosphere to it. It was the origin of it, or the concept of it, was come from one of the partners named Jay Sarno. The way you would describe Las Vegas, and I was describing it to a gentleman yesterday that I'll explain later, but when you talk to Las Vegas, well, if you came in by bus, you stayed downtown. If you flew in, you stayed on the Strip. So there wasn't a lot of elegance to downtown. Steve Wynn, a young, creative thinker also, said, I'm going to change that. I'm going to buy the Gold Nugget, but I'm going to put in gold fixtures and higher quality living arrangements in the rooms, and we're going to make this a classier place downtown. That was not accepted. It was, as Steve told you, people ridiculing him later on, it was kind of ridiculed at the beginning, saying, what sense does that make? My God, I don't know. Well, one thing happened for him that made a difference with the Golden Nugget, besides the fact that he got a property in New Jersey. He developed a relationship with an entertainer who was kind of near the end of his career, very well known, and was very selective on what and where he wanted to perform. And so he had a small room in the Golden Nugget, and he had a fellow named Frank Sinatra. So that was a part of the transition for Steve Wynn, who ultimately developed a relationship through a mutual friend with Michael Milken, one of the more significant financial minds in our lifetime. And Michael Milken showed him how to leverage certain high-yield bonds in order to finance the Mirage Hotel. The Mirage Hotel, as Steve told you, was the first really resort-themed hotel. It wasn't Caesar's Palace, it was more than that. He put the volcano out in front of the Mirage Hotel. He had hired Siegfried and Roy to put one of the most big production shows that you've seen, the initiation of those, as opposed to the headline room entertainers. And then he built that opening, it opened in 1989. Now by 1989, I had become governor of the state of Nevada. And I wanted to bring the Western governors here for a meeting. And our first meeting was going to be at the new Mirage Hotel. My eyes kind of glossed over, and I said, this is a really phenomenal place, Steve. I mean, God, your overhead must be astronomical. He said, no, it's $1 million. I thought, huh? You think you can cover like $1 million a week? Or no, it's $1 million a day. I said, you're going to open up a hotel that's going to have an overhead of $1 million a day? It cost him $680 million to build it? I said, yeah, that's no problem. We'll make $300,000 a day off of the slots. We'll make $300,000 a day off of the rooms. We'll make the other $400,000 off of the other amenities in the property, and the table games will all be profit. Now, that was the thinking that brought him forward, that was ridiculed by all his contemporaries at the time, because they said, this is ridiculous. You can't get that much money. But he did. And the first year, they were bringing in $2 million a day. As a result, they took part of the land that he had, and he built Treasure Island. And later on, he built the Bellagio, et cetera, and Monte Carlo, et cetera. So that was a transitionary era as well. But because of the need for financing at a much higher level, as other properties began to be built, they went to financial considerations as, how are we going to get this much money? And so they became publicly traded companies. But you can consider the community that we lived in at that time. The economic opportunities revolved around it was almost our only industry, not only our primary industry, but almost our only industry. And so a lot of the women considered whether they could be dancers or be in the show, et cetera. The guys, or dealers in hotels, et cetera, usually around the gaming industry. There was a different industry then. It was more who you knew to get a job, who you knew to deal with almost anything. It wasn't corporate endeavor as it is now. When it switched to corporations, the quality of the product and the volume of attendance and et cetera grew dramatically. But it also changed the culture. You know, we think of, oh my God, they all built this to make money off of gaming. Well, that isn't the case anymore. That's why you make a lot of money off of nightclubs. You make a lot of money off of all the restaurants you see in there. You make money off of the prices on the rooms, which in Las Vegas can be higher than they were and still be lower than they are in like New York City or some of the other competitive locations. They're able to charge for those values. And so when you look at hotels and casinos now, the atmosphere and the determinations are different. Thinking in terms of where we're going to put our resources wasn't necessarily putting another craps table or a few more slot machines. It was, let's put an attraction that can generate money because 2/3 of our money are coming from that anyhow. I hope I've given you a little bit of an overview of what was once then and certainly not what is today. But what you need to understand is that one common denominator always existed and does exist, and that is how you treat the customers, how you make them feel welcome. When we had a challenge years ago, when Atlantic City became the first other location to legalize gaming, they had so many people coming to Atlantic City that some of the people from Las Vegas went there to get better jobs. And they came back with this attitude, some of them, that, well, we like it there because we don't have to take any gruff from any customer because we've got so many customers lined up, we can treat them bad, it doesn't make any difference. You know, we'll just say, get out of the way, we'll get to the next person. That attitude started to prevail a little bit in Las Vegas. And fortunately, the Convention and Visitors Authority and others brought everybody together and said, we have to understand that we're only in business because people are being treated nicely. You know, my tourism minister has an old saying, and that is, you don't get a second chance at a first impression. So when people come to Las Vegas, the thing we want to keep in mind is that everybody pulls together. We want that first impression to be a very positive one because we want them to come back. The other anomaly, I'll just pass on in case you want to ask any question about it, is that in the course of the Wynn Resorts Board, I've been involved with the opening of our casinos in China. So I have some experience in that regard as well. So it's been fascinating for me to see the transition and be a part of it and to be a part of Las Vegas now as it was then.
Give Mr. Bernhardt a big hand. And I want to say this, to get Mr. Bernhardt to come out and speak to you, he has a very busy schedule. So I am just so grateful for you coming by and remembering our 50 years of friendship. This gentleman is indirectly responsible for me, no, directly responsible for me graduating, being Coach Tarkanian's one of his first ball players to graduate on time. Now, how did he do that? Did he force me to go to class? No, he was my counselor in a program called Upward Bound. And we're about the same age, but he has a way. You see that smile on his face? I've seen him knock people down with that smile physically when we played sports. But he gave me the right directions to make sure that I got my degree on time by going to school as a junior and a senior in high school, taking college courses. And if it wasn't for him, someone telling me that this is going to pay off one day, I never would have graduated on time and one of Coach Tark's first ball players to graduate on time. So I want to thank you publicly for that.
I'm going to try to give you a brief rundown of kind of what Nevada gaming regulation is all about, but I'll try to get through a lot of this to give you some idea of what we in Nevada did and built as a regulatory structure, how important that is, and some of the key concepts that make gaming regulation in Nevada the model that's used throughout the world for effective regulation. As many of you know, gaming license is a very, very valuable asset. But unlike many assets, it can't be sold. You can't sell a gaming license, but you can lose it. From the gaming perspective, a license is valuable only insofar as it's in good standing. If you lose it, then you have no value whatsoever. Not only will you be deprived of operating what can be a lucrative business in the state of Nevada, you will also be barred, in effect, from running, working in, owning a gaming establishment anywhere in the world. A gaming license is so valuable that today's licensees don't have any incentive to cheat the public, to skim money off the top, because the license itself is worth so much more than what little bit of money, relatively, you could skim out of a slot machine operation and take out the back door. So those days are long gone, at least in part because of the conscientious work that the regulators have done and the licensees have done to make sure they comply with Nevada gaming. We're going to talk about how important compliance with regulation is to the gaming industry. Any licensee, anyone who wants to become a licensee, has to really open up his or her life, not just for the last couple years, your entire life. Not unusual for our investigators to go back to high school. Want to know everywhere you've lived since high school, every job you've had since high school, reasons for changing jobs, every dime in your bank account has to be justified. Did it come from legitimate operations? If you've never had a job, never paid taxes, never got a W-2 form, but you have several $1 million in the bank, that's going to raise questions. Where did that money come from? The Gaming Control Board and the Gaming Commission typically treat people much, much more leniently if they have self-reported a violation. If the gaming agents go out and find a violation that a casino has known about and is kept from our attention, that licensee will not be treated as favorably. And then finally, compliance. There has to be a commitment within the industry to complying with gaming regulations. And that has to be done on many levels, and we'll go through some of that. We've cited the statute here, and NRS is the gaming statute primarily involved with gaming, Chapter 463. And it requires for a person who's qualified to be licensed to have good character, honesty and integrity, and prior activities, reputation, habits, and associations do not pose a threat to the public interest. That's why if you've been convicted of a crime, especially a crime involving integrity, stealing from an employer, that kind of thing, then there would be a threat to the public interest, especially with the gaming industry and how much cash actually is handled. So many, in fact, all of the major licensees in Nevada have compliance plans that require their employees to submit reports anytime they see something suspicious going on. And they're protected from being fired or disciplined. They have to have a channel to pass on complaints about questionable activity all the way up to the supervisors, all the way to the board of directors, management of the company. And the goal, of course, what you want, violation-free operations. As I said a minute ago, a violation in Nevada can destroy a company or an individual who wants to be licensed in any jurisdiction involving gaming. So here's what we're looked at as regulators by many in the industry. We're the ogres. We're the ones that come in and tell people what they can't do. We're the ones who impose punishment and discipline. And many licensees will say, well, let's get rid of gaming regulation. Let us run our business the way other businesses do. Make our decisions based on what's good for the market. Why should we have to comply with all these regulations? Well, as I said, the goal is to make sure that Nevada retains its position of integrity, reputation, strict but fair regulation, so that people and the public know they're being treated fairly when they go into the casino to gamble in a game. All right, so how do the casinos get there? They have a compliance plan that's in writing, and it requires a review of all the business activities of the operator. The committee has to be made up of people that are independent in some respects from management of the company, and they have to file reports with the Gaming Control Board on what their compliance committee is doing. They have to look at any material transaction. It can be a purchase, it can be a financing, new loans. Officers, directors, key employees, consultants, and lobbyists all have to be reviewed to make sure their background is suitable for the casino operations. Some of the sadder chapters in Nevada gaming was where there were some suppliers of things like sheets and linens who were paying kickbacks to some of the gaming company employees, and therefore getting into business that way. It's a very common thing that you don't have cheating on the gaming floor, but you have cheating by outsiders trying to get more business, willing to pay people within the company to favor that company. Once you have a plan, you implement the plan. You're required to have meetings, agendas, minutes, report on action items, examine conflicts of interest. Companies have to have a code of ethics, chain of command for reporting, review material contracts and hires, and make sure all the departments in the property are complying as well. Are the internal controls adequate? Is implementation effective? Is information collected and distributed appropriately? Hard Rock fell short on all of those factors in this particular case. Their internal controls did not evaluate whether or not the advertising campaign was too risque or violation of Nevada's morals before the billboards went up. They didn't implement their compliance plan, and they didn't distribute the information appropriately to upper level management so they could be sure that management was in control and not the advertising department. So typically, what we see on the regulatory side, there would be insufficient documentation that particular decisions have been reviewed before implementation, and then there might be company-specific items that aren't addressed. So it's nothing wrong with being edgy, with the Hard Rock being an edgy property, trying to appeal to a certain level of customer. But there should be ways to cover that to protect the public so the regulators are comfortable that whatever compliance activities are being followed have specific relevance to that location. We also see compliance officers or committees that aren't sufficiently independent. So you have management that says, we want an edgy advertising campaign. What employee is going to say no? If you don't have some level of independence to report violations or potential violations, then the compliance plan falls short. A lack of independent investigation is another common problem we see. You rubber stamp management. Now, if you're working, for example, at Wynn Resorts and Steve Wynn orders you to do something and you think it's wrong, it's going to be hard to say no. But there has to be a system in place for you as an employee to complain to someone to try to get redress so you don't commit illegal acts just because the boss tells you to do so. So, again, the goal of Nevada's regulators is not to catch people, to play gotcha and punish them for regulatory violations. And effective compliance is better for the bottom line of the property. You do find the potential for wrongdoing, and you are able to set up systems and controls to make sure it doesn't actually happen before there is some kind of a loss to the company. If there are repeated violations or egregious noncompliance, then there can be further complaints and discipline. Just one other example of one that came before me on the commission involved another property that held a car giveaway contest. They brought in all their high rollers from all over the country, and the end of the weekend junket, there was going to be a raffle, a drawing for a brand new Mercedes. They had one of their particular high roller gamblers who'd come to town as part of that junket, had lost tremendous amounts of money at the tables over the course of the weekend. The host who brought that particular customer in felt bad for his customer and figured there was some way he had to make it up to him. So he rigged the raffle drawing. And the winning ticket was pulled, and sure enough, it's the high roller who had lost a ton of money during the weekend. No one would have known about this except one of the other employees at the raffle reported it under the compliance procedures. Upper level officials at the company reported it to the Gaming Control Board. At that time, management did a complete investigation to see how high up that particular cheating had gone. Did somebody approve it in advance? And all the evidence came out, confirmed by the board. It was the one rogue employee trying to make his customer feel better, and he rigged it. So on the commission, we again took the view that because the compliance process worked, because management took the initiative, investigated, we confirmed there was no evidence that the higher-ups at the property were involved. So we decided that that was still a violation. We fined this property several $100,000, but did not take action. The response of the licensee, the response of the business, can be very, very favorable in mitigating punishment. Okay, ran through it quickly.
Senator Keith Hoffer, back in the day, Senator Keith Hoffer was looking at running for the President of the United States. And one of his goals was to try and close down Las Vegas, or threaten to close Vegas because it was unsavory. And as we talked in this class, a lot of the gaming at the very beginning, back in 1932, we had a lot of bad habits. A lot of bad habits which had come from the proliferation of people that were in organized crime, said, hey, fellas, let's go to Vegas. It's legal, but they brought bad habits with them. And some of those bad habits was one of the things, or some of the things that Senator Keith Hoffer talked about. And so that said, we needed a regulation committee. We needed a gaming control board. Mr. Bernhardt and the commission and their agents are very serious about regulations. They will not play games, and as Mr. Bernhardt said at the very beginning, the license is so valuable. Why play games? And so you hear the fines, 200,000, $1 million. Some of the, I would say, now you correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the bigger fines were under your jurisdiction, and it was for a reason. If you want to.
Sure. You know, you're right. The largest fine that we imposed was on the Mirage, Bellagio, where there are requirements that what are called CTRs, currency transaction reports, have to be filed. Anytime there is transactions of $10,000 or more in cash during a single calendar day. And that's part of the federal government's requirements to fight money laundering, drug trafficking, a lot of cash there that has to be laundered and turned into clean money. So the Bellagio had procedures for making sure those CTRs were filed. Well, their employee did not file them. Everyone did everything right until they sent it to the person charged with cataloging and sending the CTRs to the federal government. He got overwhelmed with his job. There were so many of these documents. They piled up in his office. He had boxes and boxes of CTRs dating back several years that had not been submitted. Now, our view of that was an incredibly serious violation, not just because the employee was not able to do his job, but the employer did not give the employee adequate support, and the employer did not have internal auditing procedures set up to confirm that CTRs had been sent to the federal government. So we ended up fining Bellagio, I think it was $5 million for that. A lot of people felt that was a pretty minor violation for that kind of a fine. But if you don't submit required reports to the federal government says the gaming industry can't control itself, we're going to shut it down. The entire industry could have been shut down because that one employee was overwhelmed.
Those of you that are thinking about taking gaming classes, the gaming program is no joke. It is really just as serious and they impart so many serious things about protection of the game, people cheating, dealers. I mean, it is very viable, and it's a program that we really need to bolster for this industry. So again, class, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate you. I am here with the illustrious #1 boxing referee, in my opinion, in the history of boxing, Mr. Kenny Bayless. Mr. Kenny Bayless, I call him the billionaire referee because he has reffed over $1 billion worth of economic impact to the city of Las Vegas. Mr. Bayless?
Hello. Again, my name is Kenny Bayless, and I am just blessed and thankful that Dr. Wright invited me to come speak to his class. I got a lot of history in Las Vegas. I came here in 1972 from Northern California, got involved in the sport of boxing, and over the years became one of the top referees in the world. And speaking today in Dr. Wright's class in the area of hotel hospitality, it was very, and special events. Thank you, Lottie. Special events. Because I've been involved in a number of special events in Las Vegas in the area of boxing, it kind of gave me the persona to talk to the students here, which was very enjoyable, not only for myself, the other speakers that Dr. Wright had, the senator, and Pat Christensen. Pat Christensen, I go back with him a few years, back when him and Dennis Renfrock were running the streets, and it's just been great. It's been a very warming experience. I loved every minute of it, and I'm willing to do it again.
Illustrious and the greatest actor that I know, world-renowned actor, Mr. Antonio Vargas. He has spoken in my classes. He is the type of person that gives back. He doesn't, I have to tell you this story. I happened to be in an airport with him, and we could not walk 10 steps without people wanting his autograph. I mean, whatever age, some people knew him as Huggy Bear, some people knew him as Doc. I mean, just young and older, I won't say old, older people would come up and ask him for his autograph. I told him from here on in, I won't be traveling with him. I can't get anywhere. May miss a flight.
Well, my life has given me an opportunity to impact a lot of people through television and film, but you are about sowing those same kinds of seeds with the students that you touch. Now as a Dr. Wright, and there's so many young people who are in this classroom and the classrooms that I've visited with you, who are going out there and doing and spreading your strength, hope, and experience in their lives and into their immediate families' lives, and then also into their communities. And I really love this. Let Las Vegas be your classroom. And this one today, this afternoon, was so enlightening. It was so enlightening, and you had a really rapt audience. I think every time you come to your classes, your students have a hunger that translates into that they want to get knowledge so that they can go out and be the best that they can be in the hospitality industry or whatever walk of life that they choose, because what they get here is tools to survive. And I'm just so proud to be a supporter of yours and to be and your friend, that we've traveled places together and experienced things, and there's so much more for us to do.
I am here with Jeanette, and she is one of my students, and she was here for the entire event. And I just wanted to ask Jeanette, what did you get out of it? Some key things that you may have learned from either the senator or from the boxing referee or from Pat Christensen. What did you learn that kind of sticks out to you from the lecture?
Thank you, Dr. Wright. Well, to begin with, I'm very happy that I attended this. It was a very amusing and very learning experience for me here that I learned from all these high successful men who succeeded so much more in life, and they did so much more, and they did a lot to complete Vegas. And I'm very happy that I'm house talented because there's so much growing opportunities and careers here, and that I know if you really chase what you want to do, you will actually make it to you're successful in what you want to accomplish in life. And I really enjoyed it a lot.
I'm here with Mr. Kevin Leung, and he's one of my students, and I asked him, what did he learn from the speakers today? Did he enjoy it? What were some of the things that he can take on to his future as a hospitality leader? Mr. Leung?
Thank you. So I learned from Vegas that we started out from a railroad, that we actually have some of the most innovative minds that brought Vegas to what we are today. And to continue on, we have to be really innovative, keep moving on forward, and just be creative.
I am here with one of my prize students, Amal, which means hope. I wanted to ask Amal, what did she think about the lecture series, Let Las Vegas Be Your Classroom? Did you learn anything?
This lecture was so informative. I learned about the financial development of Las Vegas, and I learned about the Las Vegas history, how Las Vegas was in the past and how it's now.
I'm here with my student, Arif, and I tell you what, man, that red show looked really nice on him. I wanted to ask Arif, what did you get out of this Let Las Vegas Be Your Classroom?
Hi, I really enjoyed the Rev, Kenny Bayless. I enjoyed how he talked about getting your foot in the door, how to succeed in Vegas. I also enjoyed Senator Bryan and how he develops laws that benefit both the local and how to promote Las Vegas as Sin City. Kenny Bayless is actually a huge inspiration because I'm from California. And when he brought up the Kings, that was like a flashback for me because I was a huge Kings fan growing up. Thank you.
I am talking to Emily Salmon, and I wanted to ask her something a little different. What did your group prepare for our meal, our diversity meal in the back? What did you guys prepare, and did you prepare anything personally?
Personally, yes, but I'll start off with my group. Our group made a French pastry with chocolate cream inside, and a doughy pastry with, white sugar powder on top. Another person from our group made enchiladas. It was kind of, how do I describe it? Like a roll with chicken and cheese, really good. I personally made oxtail. I love oxtail. I figured, yeah, well, it is. It's something different, different flavors, different mixes.
I'm here with Jeffrey Kugler, Mr. Jeffrey Kugler. He is a veteran, and he is one of our captains here in our class. I wanted to ask him, what did you get out of the lecture, the Let Las Vegas Be Your lecture? What was some of the high points that you got out of it?
Yes, sir. I learned a lot about the history of Las Vegas from when it was a small little ant in an anthill, and how it's progressed. And I almost wish I wasn't retired.